Welcome to the Butt Fixer Podcast, brought to you by Shane Gentry and John Van Olden. Sit back, listen up, and listen good. You're going to hear it all right because we've already done it all wrong. We're going to help you meet your goals and fix your butts. Welcome to the Butt Fixer Podcast.
Okay, this has been a while. We have not had a chance to record one. I've been in Asia. Shane has been all over the place at veterinary conferences and stuff. But this is our first podcast recording in a while. And today we have Catherine Clark, who is in Wellington, New Zealand, on the other side of the world. Is it summer there right now? Like Australia?
Yeah, it's getting there slowly.
Man, you're so lucky. It was below zero out here, Celsius, over the weekend. It was just horrible. So not fun. And Catherine is an author. At least now she's an author. We'll find out how she got here. And the way I found her is through my sister, who dug up some genealogical research on our family on my mother's side. And Catherine wrote a book. I have the picture of it here. It's called "The Only Living Lady Parachutist," who and it involved ballooning, balloonist pioneers at the turn of the century, which used to be a big thing. And my great grandfather is a character in her book, so I definitely want to get into how that all went down, because she did a lot of research on his life that we use in my family to maybe possibly explain why we're all a bunch of fuck ups. But anyway, Catherine, tell us your story. Like, have you been a writer your whole life? Is this something you got into later on? How did you get to be sitting here talking to a couple of guys on the East Coast in the United States about this book?
Well, it probably started about 25 years ago. My grandmother died, and she left a book that she'd had we'd never seen before, and it was a book of newspaper clippings going back to the sort of 1870s, mostly in England, and it was her father's family. And I was fascinated by this book, so I got right into working out who these people were in the book, in the newspapers, and got into my family history, researching that. And from there, I went and I did a community education course on doing a website, because websites were the thing back then, just new, and specifically for family history. And it was just a sort of turning point for me. And from that, I went on and I did a degree extramurally, because I was working as a medlab scientist. And there's not a lot of creativity in medlab science. You've got to do everything by the book.
Yeah.
And so this sort of writing stuff came from doing the degree. Some of the papers I took, they didn't need an exam. You could do a writing paper and you didn't have to do an exam at the end of it, because I had about
I gotcha.
25 papers to do. So the ones without exams were good, because I was still working full time and everything. So after about 8 years, I got to the end of that degree. And then one day I was just sort of looking on the internet, and I saw this blog post by a guy in New Zealand who was talking about Layla Adair and how she would jump from a balloon with a parachute. And she toured all around New Zealand in 1894. And people would pay a shilling to come and watch her. You know, the thing was that accidents often happened, and I think they sort of wanted to see something.
That's a train wreck of a different sort.
Yeah, it was sort of a grisly kind of fascination. Anyway, but nothing terribly bad happened to her. And I thought, this is a great story. And we have this thing that National Library does here called Papers Past, where all the old newspapers from New Zealand are digitised, and you can look at it for free, a little bit like chronicling America. And so I started looking at this, and they have the same thing in Australia called Trove. And I could see that there was a great story there, just ready made. I didn't really have to write it. It was all there for me. And so I started researching all these people. But the hard part about it was that they all used false names, and they all lied about their age and made up stories about themselves. So it was quite tricky to work out what was true and what wasn't. And so I got really into the research. And after that, I sort of thought, oh, well, I've got to get started on writing this thing. And so I joined up with NaNoWriMo, which is a sort of international thing that they have in November, where you try and write a novel in a month. And I thought, oh, well, I'm never going to do that. But it got me started, and I managed to write down about 20,000 words. And that was the start. And then I just kept working away at it for a long time.
Were you still working like a job? Yeah.
So it was kind of after work and weekends and things.
And this was a completely random, like a random thing that you saw in this newspaper clipping of this woman that jumped out of balloons, and this is what got you on this path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. And so it was quite a long process to get it published. I got a mentorship through the New Zealand Society of Authors. And I also got a manuscript assessment with them. And then I got an agent, but it didn't sell. And so I thought, oh, there's something wrong with that. And so I got another assessment done by an outfit called the History Quill. And he sort of pulled it to pieces and said I sort of had the structure a bit wrong. And so I rearranged all that and then decided to self-publish it. But by then, of course, it was COVID, and I think I published it about 3 years ago now. So, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. And you? So, have you written anything else? That's what I was looking at. Or is that...
I've written a few short stories, and I do a few articles sometimes for the New Zealand Genealogist about my own family history, because I've got a interesting family of my own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I haven't written anything else apart from
and so you're so you have a history, or you have a interest in genealogy.
Yeah, I love the research. Yeah.
You like the research
of
doing it. Yeah. Because the book is good. I mean, it held my interest all the way through. I think I read it in 2 or 3 days while I was on vacation. So vacation, I don't, I'm self-employed. There is really no real vacation, but it was when I was out of town, I at night, not trying to stay away from the TV because of everything that's going on over here. I did a lot of reading, and I thought it was a good read, really good for your very first effort to write something like that is crazy. And so you had to rewrite the whole book?
Oh, no, not really. I just had to change the structure. There was a piece in it that was sort of the key to her past that I had it near the end, and I had to bring it much further forward in the book, and that kind of made it all fit together better, I think. And yeah.
Wow. Because everybody, I mean, even me, I'm like, oh, I should write a book someday. I mean, I don't really, I think my book would be more nonfiction than fiction, but still, you say you want to do it, but actually when you sit down and start, it's like, it doesn't sound interesting. And if you start to write something, you're done in like 3 pages, and you're like, how do I stretch this out into something, that's interesting, that somebody would actually want to read.
Yeah. And then you kind of get so close to it that you can't really judge it after a while as to whether it's any good or not, because you just know it inside out, and it's really good to get that outside assessment to help you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So are you writing now? Are you writing anything?
No.
Another book, or?
No, I retired last year, and I'm just enjoying not having to do anything.
No, I thought writing would be like, like a good retirement, thing.
I'm just having a break.
All right.
I'd like to do some stories about my own family, mainly, probably not to publish, but yeah.
No?
Oh, yeah.
How about telling, so tell me about your, what's interesting about your family? Like how far back have you gone in your genealogy?
Well, on my mum's side, we're actually descended from King Charles II, would you believe, through Nell Gwyn, the illegitimate side.
Oh,
So I can
wow.
go
Okay.
way back there, but I've got I think my 5 times great-grandfather was hanged in 1812 for an unnatural
Whoa.
act.
All right.
So he's pretty famous. Not that we ever knew about him until I started doing the research.
Okay.
I've got another Irish ancestor who went to the States, and he stole some money from a newspaper that he was setting up during the Civil War and absconded with his daughter to come to New Zealand. He sort of had a custody arrangement or something with his ex-wife. And so he
Uh-huh.
took this 9-year-old girl to New Zealand. So that's how they ended up there. But
Oh
I've
my
been doing a whole
gosh.
lot of Civil War research because his brother was involved in the Civil War, and they all used fake names as well. So that's taken a long time to unravel those.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you do it? I mean, the internet helps, right? But
Yeah, and
yeah.
websites like Ancestry, and I'm involved in the genealogy groups. I write a newsletter for them every month as well, so I learn stuff as I go along. Yeah,
That's
I've actually got a
crazy.
balloonist in my family as well. Yeah,
You do. How
yeah,
in the
No
same
kidding.
in the same era?
a little bit. Yeah, about the same actually. Maybe a little bit earlier. He was in England, and he was doing sort of scientific research.
Okay. So
He was
not like a sideshow.
No, he was a rather eccentric vicar.
Yeah, that stuff is so the genealogy stuff. I had ours done. My wife, my wife's mother is really into that stuff. And I always I used to at one time have red hair. And, but it was only like me, my sister, and one of my cousins in the entire family. And then, so we always kind of wondered where that came from. So she did our, way back search and everything. And the most fascinating thing for me was just like there was a bunch of like old will and when they pass away, what they're leaving to the next person.
Yeah.
And like one of them always stands out because it was just the most awkward mix of stuff. It was one skillet, 2 goats, and a house of ill repute.
Oh my goodness.
That's what it was. That's what it said in the genealogy, in the will, last will and testament of this dude. His name was Shadrach.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Yeah,
So, but it's fascinating.
Shadrach's Fun Shack.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah, he was, yeah. There was some shack going on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, it was interesting when my sister ran across and I don't know if she ran across your website because she found that, and then she also, I think I sent you some newspaper clippings about my grandmother, which are just pretty wild in and of itself. But on that side of my family, it's a black hole mystery. Nobody knows. I mean, we don't really know who our grandfather is, quite frankly, on that side. But we know my grandmother. We know that that's her father, the guy that you ran across. And then on the flip side, my father's side of the family, we go back to the 1500s. We have a really clean genealogy. I've never looked into the background of everybody. I know our famous ancestor that founded the Dutch East Indies Company. We all know him, and then kind of the sons and the brothers. Well, they were executed. He was beheaded at the age of 76, I think, in 1619, and his sons were killed. So we actually are direct descendants of his brother, and I guess there would be a way to delve into, like, I guess the personal family history of all these people, right? Is that right? Yeah. So the generation after generation going back, but I do know who those people are. We have that all written out. But on my mother's side, it's a black hole, and I mean up to even my grandmother, they were using fake names and aliases, and were they married? Were they not married? They lived together. They took each other's names, but they weren't married. And it's a wild, let's just say the apple didn't fall far from the tree from the guy you found
Yeah, well,
on that.
with DNA testing now, you can get unravel a lot of those mysteries. Yeah, so
Oh,
I've tested myself, and my mum, and my uncle, and yeah, found quite a little bit of Jewish ancestry there that we didn't
but
know
how far
about.
back can you can't go
You can go back
like
about 5 or 6 generations. Yeah.
with DNA testing?
Yeah, with the autosomal test. And if you wanted to do the male line, you can do the Y test that goes back forever. Yeah.
Wow.
That's
But don't you have to have the DNA of the people that like from way back when to be able to do that? To find it?
no, you find shared matches with that
Mhm.
share the same DNA as you, and you can work at it. So it's a little bit like a little jigsaw piece, and you try and fit it into the puzzle. And so, depending on the size of the match, you can work out how close they are, and yeah,
Wow.
and work it back
Wow.
to a common ancestor. Yeah.
Maybe I'll skip a generation on that, and somebody a few generations down can skip it, and
Yeah.
they'll write an article about the notorious John Van Olden or something. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So
you find a few surprises with DNA.
yeah, I'm willing to bet you could for sure. So how so in the book you wrote, like my ancestor, my great grandfather is a character in your book, but did you do that level of research on all the characters in that book?
Yeah, pretty much. So he was James William Price, but that wasn't the name he was born with. He was actually Sisk, and it took me a long time to
Wow.
unravel his background. Yeah. So
So he is not a Price.
no,
I'm
Price was
writing all
his
this down.
stepfather. Yeah,
Oh
who
wow.
was
So,
a sort of local crook.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. And what SISK? Like Sisk?
Yeah. Sisk. Yeah.
So we're Sisks. And all this time before I found your before I found the stuff that my sister sent you that you wrote, I had no idea that I had an American in my background. I thought that we were all we all came from England or English descent
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah.
Singapore and Asia. I had no idea that some American crept in there and
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
over. Yeah, go
when he
ahead.
went to Asia, he was in Asia doing his ballooning sort of endeavours in about 1915, 1920, and so there's a lot of passport applications that he made then with pictures of him. And
Wow.
he says he's born in Gentry, Missouri, but um, I think he was actually, like he always says 1871, but he's actually born about 1861, and it was probably near Springfield, Illinois, that he was born.
That's
But
crazy.
it's quite hard to find those records.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. So where then the my grandmother's mother is was she English or was
Yeah.
she Singaporean
Is that
descent?
Jessie, is it? Yeah, I'm not sure. I think she's British. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't really
British.
go
And
into his wives so much because you can disappear down these rabbit holes and you never come out.
yeah, I mean my grandmother had Asian features. I remember when she when she literally had plastic surgery on her eyes to make them more
Oh,
round.
okay. Yeah.
When
Really?
yes.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
for
I think
sure.
her name
Wow.
was
I didn't even know you could do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jessie Young, and I mean that could have been a Chinese name, but I did find her naturalization, and she says she's British on that, but whether that's true or not, who knows?
Yeah, I know it's crazy.
Yeah.
My mother was born in England, but the birth certificate is some handwritten thing that I could never use to uh, claim any kind of dual citizenship or anything. It's
Mm.
just so vague. That whole side of the family is just so completely vague. And she married she married a U.S. service member. That's how she ended up over here after World War II. But then she divorced him, or she didn't divorce him. There's no and that's just one generation back. That's how that goes. And she had 5 kids with every one of my sisters has a different dad. I have the same dad as one of my sisters.
All right.
And we have it's really unclear if our mother was even here legally by the time we came around, or not. So I guess we can find that out. You can find it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, with your expertise. So it's
Yeah.
a wild. It was a wild thing to find that. I'm telling you.
Mm.
So you do not feel like you would write another. You're like done. That was like a huge undertaking, or do you feel like maybe?
Maybe.
I mean, you've only been retired a couple of years. You're still kind of getting
sometime, but
getting into it.
yeah, it's. I mean, self-publishing is quite expensive to do it. And
is it?
Yeah.
How has it? So how has it gone with that particular?
Financially wise, I was never expecting to make a profit or anything. I just wanted to basically get what it cost back again.
Okay.
It wasn't about being a bestseller or anything, but.
Yeah, but you won. Did you win an award? You won an award for it, or you won a?
Yeah,
you were a finalist.
I got shortlisted for the Lillian Smith Award through the New Zealand Society of Authors, so that was quite nice. Yeah.
And what kind of award is that for? A certain genre, or is it just a general
no,
writing
it was just
award?
a general thing. It was a manuscript in progress kind of thing, and then I can't remember what the prize was now. You got to work with someone on it or something. You got some help for it. Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you did it again, would it be the same, like a similar genre, or would you?
Yeah, I really like
are you interested
historical fiction, so yeah, it'd be something on that line. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. You should. I mean, the amount of digging that you've done, you could do that for other people, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you done that, or?
For other people to help them. Yeah. Just since I've been retired, I was helping a friend in the genealogy group. She discovered she had a half sister last year that she never knew about, and her mother had had this baby with an American GI when he was here in the war, and they discovered each other through DNA, and so I helped her work out with the DNA who her father was. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Gosh, you could call it gene genealogy.
Yeah. Yeah, and so she got his American file just a couple of days ago, and it had a picture of him in it, and that. So that was nice.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy. So, and again, before this, tell me the occupation you were doing. It was
I was a medical laboratory scientist, so doing blood tests on people, analysing their blood results and that. Yeah.
So, other than DNA, which you wouldn't look at there, there's no relation whatsoever. You just got into doing the research.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, like, how difficult then, I mean, I'm going to be selfish here, and because I'm fascinated by the fact that you dug up my great-grandfather from New Zealand. It's just the most random thing ever. So, and probably very random when you got my email, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get emails from different people that are associated with the book every now and then, so it's really nice.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Like, who else have you heard from?
The guy in the book who was Arthur, I got heard from someone who was descended from him, and he's a bit of a mystery as to what happened to him in the end. I haven't managed to track him down because he would, every time he sort of got into financial difficulty, he would reinvent himself and claim he'd been left some money and skip the country. So he did it twice.
Seems like a common theme back in those days, right? I guess you could before the internet. Just skip the country. Who cares? What's a credit report, right?
Yeah. Where he ended up, I don't know.
the good old days. Yeah. So and the book is I mean, it's still fiction. I mean, right? It's like a historical fiction. It's so it's a lot like, say, like a James Michener book or something like that.
I had to sort of make up some parts of it because I didn't really know. I couldn't find out what had happened, and so I just sort of thought, what's the most plausible thing here? But as I was writing it, it sort of started to feel more as if it was true to me. And there was a funny bit in it with the guy Arthur in the book where I'd given him a sort of a scar on his chin just because I just thought, oh, well, I will. And then when I found out who he really was, he actually did have a scar on his chin. He'd been kicked in
That's
the
crazy.
head by a horse when he was a child.
He was in there going, all right.
Yeah.
Bing,
Like
bing, bing,
touching.
bing.
So that was kind of weird.
Interesting. And so what, like, of the characters in the book, then, like the two sisters that are the ones that are like doing the like the I mean, I guess the ballooning, right? And the jumping out and the parachuting out of the balloons.
Where did that start?
Yeah. Like, how did that was just
I'm gonna hang on to this balloon and let go.
Yeah. Well, it was really the Park Van Tassel that started it. He was associated with Baldwin, who was quite a famous balloonist, and so he would tour around, but he got too heavy for the balloons, and so that's why he got hooked in with James Price, your ancestor, because he was much lighter. And of course the girls were even lighter, and so because the balloons were pretty primitive, and if you had some big heavy dude hanging off the end, they weren't going to go high enough, and so the lighter women were much more successful because the balloon would go higher and then they could release the parachute and put on their show.
That's crazy. And they would go up and like hang off of like a trapeze off of the bottom of this balloon with like they're like homemade parachutes, right?
Yeah,
That they had. Yeah. They made the parachutes themselves. They sewed the balloons themselves.
Let me think about it. No.
Yeah, and I believe they would inflate them by just with just an open flame, and half the time they would, not half the time, but they'd catch fire, and then their show is over, and they have to, go on hiatus until they redo a balloon or whatever. It's just a crazy thing.
You got to be really. I've done some really stupid things in my life because I was bored. Not once have I said, let me hang on to this balloon and just fall off.
Yeah, and like if it was too windy or it was raining or, the balloon wouldn't go up, and then people had all paid their shilling to come and watch, and they'd feel like they'd been ripped off, and they'd get into arguments, and
chase them down, put them in jail, all kinds of things.
Guess they didn't know about disclaimers back then.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they'd usually try and put on a free show the next time so that people could come back, but sometimes they just skip town. And
I'm just curious how they charge for it, because I mean it's going up in the sky. You can see it from anywhere.
That was the problem. They would hire a sort of showgrounds or something, and they would try and encourage people to come in to watch the inflation of the balloon and things. But the trouble was nobody wanted to pay the shilling, and so they would stand on the nearest hill and watch it for free.
Right.
And so it was never a really financially viable proposition.
No. And then
you could just die.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing, Shane, is there was like no control where that thing would come down or where they would come down when they parachuted. So they'd end up in a lake. They'd end up in like across town. People would chase them on their horses and buggies to go catch them and then drive them back for their like triumphant, whatever the heck at the end. So it was
that's the true entrepreneur spirit.
I learned things that, my grandmother would tell us stories, and I envisioned this guy as some like, super like squared away captain, because they called him like Captain Price, right? So I thought he was like some military guy, and he's the first guy that ever like went here in a balloon or there in a balloon. And I thought he was like some, awesome dude that did all these, like amazing, the first person to do this and the first person to do that. And then come to find out the guy was like a 100%, scoundel is how I've been describing him.
He's like medieval jackass.
A horse, a horse. I don't know if he was a horse thief or if he came from descended from the horse thieves, but it's just like a wild story, man. I'm telling you.
He'd spent time in prison, I think, because I've got a thing here where it quotes what he'd done. When he made his first attempt in Springfield, there were those about town, some of the police said, who would have given him permission when his shabby old balloon went up to go on and never come back. One wicked fellow said he was greatly regretted that the encounter with the chimneys had terminated so innocently, but the whole thing was a farce, not half so real as some in which Professor Price has figured heretofore. Professor Price is well known to the police of the city, and a citizen who pretended to know said Price received his degree under Professor McLaury of the Joliet University. Well, he was actually the warden of the Joliet State Penitentiary, so he'd been in jail. Yeah.
In Joliet?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
Professor and Professor Price or Captain
they
Price.
called themselves Professor, and then after about 1900, they started using sort of military terms like captain, things like that.
That's similar to my business, because in the 60s and the 50s, when you were an animal wrangler, like for the movies or whatever, they called you captain. So that's why my mentor, who taught me the business, went by the name of Captain Haggerty. Yeah. Although he was a captain in the military, but they called you captain, like the guy who trained Lassie. His name was Fred Weatherwax, and they also called him Captain Weatherwax. So I don't know. You just assume. So they assume military titles. First, it was Professor. Professor
and they would
Price,
award themselves medals. There's a lovely photo from the newspaper on my website of James Price, where he's got this whole chest full of self-made medals.
There's a I don't know, Catherine, if you've ever seen that meme. There's a meme of a kid with like rows and rows and rows of medals, and he's standing there, and it says, this is like, I got a medal for every stupid thing I did when I was drunk or something like that. And it was like just rows and rows of medals. And so when I saw that picture of him, I said, oh my God, that's like the same. It totally reminded me of that.
Yeah.
So well, I mean, I definitely know where my grandmother got her ability to spin some pretty tall tales. That's for sure. And like I said, you could never, whatever she told you, it was always it always needed some kind of verification. So I wish I had a recorded history. I'd send it all to you, and you could like check out her verify all her stories and everything.
Yeah.
So it's wild. Well, we've had a couple of other authors on here. One is also self-published history, all of Delaware history and everything. And I mean, he does okay. He does a lot of he goes around and does a lot of tours and local like book signings and that kind of thing. Did you do things like that with this, or just
a little bit? Yeah, it was a little bit hard because it was COVID, and so Auckland, I think, was in lockdown then, and so it was, which is the biggest city, and it was rather hard to get to that. But so kind
of a bad timing with it.
But it was okay.
What was it like in New Zealand during COVID though? Was it like everywhere else, just locked down, or
no?
How was the vibe?
We had probably the best response, because our Prime Minister shut down the country before it really got established, and they were able to eliminate it for about 18 months, and then the vaccines arrived. So they probably saved about 20,000 lives by keeping it out for as long as they could.
How did they get started? How did what was the lockdown like that was pre everybody else? Like, was it pretty much the same, just 6 feet away, masks, all that kind of stuff? Or
no, it was a really hard lockdown. March, I think we went into, and it was 5 weeks, and they managed to eliminate it because they'd only had a few cases at that point. And so unless you were an essential worker, you weren't allowed to go to work. You had to stay home. You weren't allowed to go out. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but it
there's
worked.
Another book.
Yeah.
The book. I mean, I think that
you should write a book about writing the book during COVID.
Yeah. Well, I think that the story in the book is so cool that even that would be, it's such a, like, nobody ever really, I would have never heard about it if it wasn't my family that people did that. I mean,
Yeah.
Shane, did you know people, like, you know, built balloons and went up, and
No.
that was their thing. Go up in a balloon. They're going to make a
Yeah.
balloon.
All my
set.
folks came from dirt. We didn't have enough money for balloons.
Well, they didn't have money for balloons either.
I
They
know,
made
I know.
them.
That's just, I've never even heard of that. I mean, I've heard of people going up in hot air balloons and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, not like one you made yourself.
Yeah, in the States it was quite a big thing, you know, and they were all sort of interconnected, all the people that did it. Like Pat Van Tassel, his third wife, and James Price's fourth wife were sisters. So that was kind of weird, yeah. So
Yeah, and they were like rivals, right?
yeah, sort of rivals, associates. They worked together for a while and then they fell out.
They part. Yeah, of course. Crazy. Yeah, it is. It is I mean, that in and of itself, like, to me, would be a pretty interesting, just kind of a pretty interesting thing to go out and, like, talk about. You know, maybe, I don't know. We'll put the podcast on your website, and the whole thing is getting eyeballs on it. You never know. People might want to hear about that strange. It's like Barnum and Bailey. Stuff that they did back then. I was
contacted too by an Australian company, and they made a program called Tiny Oz, where they recreated in a miniature model the balloonist centre in Adelaide. And so I gave them all my research about that. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, it's like all this crazy.
Sounds
crazy
like career
stuff.
2.0 to me.
You never know.
You're gonna get so good, you're gonna get so popular, they're gonna want you. They're gonna start throwing money at you.
Do the expert on turn of the century balloonists and everything. I mean, I wish. I mean, my sisters will certainly watch this, but it was really super cool to run across you and everything, and I'm glad we had the chance to talk about it and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that you do, like, you build on it in some way, because it seems like there's so many little micro stories in that book that I read. So and maybe for me, I mean, I'm always interested in history anyway. Maybe it's more interesting to me. But my ancestors are just a very small part of that book, so I was drawn into the whole whole thing. I had to see what happened to them. So it was a very good read. I really enjoyed it. So
thank you.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for coming on, and I'm hoping that people see this. One of our 12 listeners.
Not after today, man. We're getting the Prices, the Van Oldens. We're getting them all after this.
They're all going to get in there. But yeah, I'm hoping that people see it and get some interest, and maybe more people will order the book. I know you got 3 orders just from my family after I found it. So we'll see. Yeah, but thank you again for taking the time and negotiating. What is it? What time is it there? And what day is it there?
It's Tuesday. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning now. So
10 a.m. Tuesday. So Tuesday.
What are the lottery numbers for North Carolina?
Yeah, you're living in the future.
What is that? Give me some future stuff. I need to know who won the ball game.
What's the
lottery ticket numbers? Who wins the horse race? I'm going back to the future, baby.
Yeah, that's funny. So yeah, well, thank you again, and you'll probably get a random email from me every now and then, and maybe I'll run across some more info for you. And if you ever want to do stories about the craziest Dutch people on the planet in the 1500s, let me know. I've got some research for you there.
Yeah, well, I try and put the research on my website, so the story behind the books. So I have to keep up with that. I haven't put anything on it for a long time now.
Yeah, awesome. And I did send you those newspaper the newspaper articles about his daughter. So
yeah, and I mean, more stuff is coming online all the time. Sort of historical records and things that you can find out stuff.
It's wild.
that wasn't there
You should
before.
do genealogy consulting. That would be a good, and you already like doing that, so you never
Yeah.
know. You
Get
never
that
know.
money.
Well, Catherine, thank you again. I really appreciate you taking the time to do it, and we'll see where this goes.
Yeah. Thanks for
and I'm going to
having
hit
me.
stop and stay right there a minute. I'm just going to hit stop.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Butt Fixer Podcast. Stay tuned for more guests, more stories, and more butt fixes. Make sure you click, like, subscribe, and follow at all of the places where you stream podcasts.